He only knew that the woman was going to drop it. He did not know her name. He did not know that she was 53 years old and had been on her feet since 5:30 that morning. He did not know that the zipper on her coat had broken 2 winters ago, and she had not replaced it because the money kept going somewhere more urgent. The hydro bill, her son's school trip, the crack in the bathroom ceiling that had started to spread. He only knew that the cardboard box she was carrying was too wide for her arms, that she was tilting sideways under the weight of it, and that the ice on the sidewalk outside the Shoppers Drug Mart on Wellington Street was the kind that looks like nothing until you are already falling. So he reached out. Both hands, steady. He took the far edge of the box before she had even registered he was there. "I've got it," he said. "I've got the other side." She looked at him. Her name was Vera Lacombe, and she had learned a long time ago to be careful about which strangers offered to help. But there was something in his face, not eagerness, not performance, just the calm attention of a man who had seen a problem and moved toward it, that made her let go. "Thank you," she said. "I'm only going to the car. It's just around the corner." "That's fine," said the man. "I'm not in a hurry." His name was Robert Calloway. He was 61 years old, and he had spent 34 of those years as a senior partner at a corporate law firm in downtown Ottawa. He had argued cases before the federal court. He had been quoted in the Globe and Mail on 4 separate occasions. He had a corner office on the 14th floor with a view of the Rideau Canal. And in the winter, when the canal froze and the skaters came out in their scarves and their rented blades, he sometimes stood at the window for longer than he meant to. He had walked to the Shoppers Drug Mart that afternoon because his car was in the shop and he had forgotten to call a cab. It was the kind of thing that happened when you were used to having a scheduler. He had forgotten what it felt like to simply walk somewhere, to feel the cold air on his face, to notice the particular gray of a November sky in Ottawa, to see the world at the pace of a person instead of a window. He had not planned to help anyone. He had gone in for cold medicine and a bag of unsalted almonds, and he was on his way back to the office, and then he saw her. The box contained a baby shower gift, a collapsible high chair, still in its packaging, with a bow that had flattened somewhere between the store and the parking lot. Vera had been meaning to wrap it properly, but had run out of time, which was a thing that had been happening more and more lately. "My nephew's wife," she said, as they rounded the corner onto Mackenzie Avenue. "First baby. She's due in 3 weeks." "Exciting," Robert said. "It is," Vera agreed, and she meant it, though she also felt the particular tiredness of a woman who had attended many of these occasions and knew both the joy and the long road that came after. The car was a gray Civic with a dented bumper and a parking sticker from Carleton University, where her son was in his 2nd year of environmental studies. Robert helped her slide the box into the back seat. When she straightened up, she pulled her coat tighter around her chest, the broken zipper, and he noticed that too, though he said nothing. "Well," she said. "Thank you, Mr. Calloway," he said. "Robert Calloway." She nodded. "Vera Lacombe, thank you, Mr. Calloway." It was nothing. She shook her head slightly, the way people do when they want to say that it was not nothing, actually, that it was the kind of thing that stays with a person. "You have a good afternoon," she said. "You as well." He turned to go. He had made it about half a block when she called after him. "Do you need a lift? It's cold." He almost said no. The word was already forming. He had a meeting at 3:30, and the office was only 8 iffy minutes away, if walked at pace. And he was a man who had always kept his own schedule, who did not accept things he had not earned, who found it difficult to receive anything without immediately calculating how to balance the ledger. But then he thought about the canal. He thought about the skaters. "If you're heading toward Metcalfe," he said, "that would be yes. Thank you." She drove the way she did everything, with her full attention on the task and none left over for performance. She did not make conversation for its own sake. The radio was on, CBC Radio 1, a program about wetland restoration, and neither of them turned it down. After a few blocks, she said, "Do you work around here?" 14 floors up, he said, and gestured vaguely east. She glanced at his coat, a dark wool overcoat, well cut, the kind that lasts 20 years if you take care of it. "Lawyer," she guessed. He was mildly surprised. "Is it that obvious?" "My father was a lawyer," she said. "Civil litigation. He had the same coat." "Different man. Same coat. What does your father say about that?" "He passed. 6 years ago." She said it the way people say things they have had time to make peace with, plainly, without the little apologies people sometimes added when they thought the listener might not be able to handle it. "He was a good man. He believed in the work." Robert was quiet for a moment. "I think I still believe in the work," he said. "I'm just not always sure the work still believes in me." She did not laugh, and she did not offer a reassurance. She just nodded, slowly, as though she was considering it. He found that he appreciated that more than he would have appreciated the laughter. They had reached Metcalfe. She pulled to the curb. "This okay?" she said. "Perfect," he said. He opened the door and then paused. "Thank you, Miss Lacombe." "Vera," she said. "Vera," he got out. He stood on the sidewalk and watched the gray Civic signal merge and disappear north on Metcalf. And then he stood there another moment, for no reason he could have named, before turning and walking the half-block to his building. He did not think about Vera Lacombe for 3 weeks. He thought about the meeting he had been 40 minutes late to, and the junior associate who had covered for him, and the file that had gone sideways over a question of disclosure, and the mediation in early December that was going to take everything he had. Then, on a Thursday morning in the second week of December, his assistant placed a small envelope on his desk. Inside was a card with a picture of a cardinal on a snowy branch, the kind of card you could find at any Shoppers Drug Mart in the country, nothing special, and inside the card, in a handwriting that leaned slightly to the left, "Mr. Calloway. You probably don't remember me. You helped me carry a box to my car on Wellington Street about 3 weeks ago. I've been meaning to write since then, but time got away from me. My nephew's wife had her baby. A girl, 7 pounds 4 ounces, doing very well. I thought you might like to know, since you were part of getting that high chair into the car. I hope the work is believing in you again. V. Lacombe." He read it twice. He set it down. He picked it up and read it a third time. He did not know how she had found his address. Then he looked at the envelope again and saw that it was addressed to R. Calloway, barrister and solicitor, and the name of the firm, which was, after all, listed in the directory. He put the card in the breast pocket of his jacket, which was not something he typically did with correspondence. He had a system. Things went in files, files went in drawers, and this broke the system, and he let it. He called her that afternoon. He was not sure why, exactly. He had her number from the firm's directory, which connected to a building supplies company called Lacombe and Associates on Bank Street, where it turned out Vera was the associate and had been since her father passed and left her a 2/3 share of a business she had never intended to run but had grown. Over 6 years, genuinely fond of. She answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Lacombe," he said. "This is Robert Calloway. You sent me a card." There was a pause that contained, he thought, both recognition and something like amusement. "I did," she said. "I wasn't sure you'd call." "I wasn't sure I would either," he said, which was more honest than he usually allowed himself to be in an opening exchange. "I wanted to say thank you and congratulations. 7 pounds 4 ounces is a good size." "She's healthy," Vera agreed. "They named her Elodie, after her grandmother on the other side. That's a fine name." Another pause, shorter this time. "How's the mediation going?" He blinked. "I didn't mention a mediation." "No," she said, "but you had the look of a man with a mediation coming. My father had the same look. Like you're already there, running through the arguments." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "It's going the way mediations go, slowly, and then, all at once." She laughed. It was a real laugh, not a polite one, the kind that comes from a place of genuine recognition. "That sounds right," she said. "My father used to say the same thing, in different words." They talked for 19 minutes. He knew it was 19 minutes because he was sitting at his desk and the clock on his computer was right in his eye line. He could not have told you afterward exactly what they talked about, except that somewhere in the middle of it she mentioned that the ice south the Shoppers on Wellington had finally been properly salted. And he mentioned that he had been taking the Long Way Lee to lunch every day since then, just to check. And there was a silence after that which did not require filling. He did not see Vera again until January. The mediation ended the week before Christmas, which was both a relief and an exhaustion, the way large things ending tend to be. He took the holiday week off, which was something he had not done in 4 years. He went to his daughter's house in Kingston and sat at her kitchen table and played an unreasonable number of games of cribbage with his son-in-law, who was patient about losing. On the 27th of December, standing at the kitchen window watching snow fall on his daughter's backyard, he thought about Vera Lacombe saying, "I hope the work is believing in you again." He thought about his corner office. He thought about the canal. He called her on the 2nd of January, after the holiday and before the treadmill of the new year had fully started up again. "I was wondering," he said, "if you might want to get coffee. No particular reason." "There's never no particular reason," she said. But yes, they met at a cafe on Elgin Street. She was already there when he arrived, sitting at a table by the window, with her coat folded over the back of her chair. A new coat, he noticed, with a working zipper. She had a black coffee in front of her and was reading something on her phone. And when he pushed through the door and the little bell rang, she looked up without the particular alertness of someone who had been waiting anxiously, but with the simple recognition of someone who had been waiting comfortably. That distinction, he thought, said something important about her. He ordered a tea. He had been avoiding coffee since October on his doctor's advice and sat across from her. Outside the window, Elgin Street was doing what Ottawa streets do in January, carrying people briskly from one warm place to another, everyone's breath visible, everyone's face slightly determined. "I've been thinking about something you said," he told her. "When we were in the car, about the work." "I remember," she said. "I've been doing this work for 34 years," he said. "I know what it asks of you. I know what you have to become over time to be useful at it. And I've been wondering lately whether the person I became is still the right shape for the life I actually want." Vera wrapped both hands around her coffee mug. She had the kind of hands that had done real work. Not rough, exactly, but settled into themselves. "My father asked himself that question," she said, "about 5 years before he died. He took a year off. He worked with a legal aid organization in Sudbury. He came back different, softer, he would have said. More useful, I would have said. Did he regret it? He regretted not doing it sooner." Robert looked out the window. A woman was walking a dog the size of a small pony. A kid on a bicycle was navigating the slush with more confidence than the situation warranted. "My firm has a pro bono division," he said. "I've been funding it for 11 years and I have never once taken a case through it myself." "Why not?" He thought about it. "Because I told myself I was more useful where I was. Billing hours, keeping the lights on for the people who could do that kind of work. Were you right?" "I was partly right," he said. "And partly I was afraid of what would happen if I slowed down enough to look at things straight." Vera set down her mug. "What are you afraid you'd see?" The question sat between them like a stone in clear water, visible, solid, something you could either pick up or step around. He picked it up. "That I've been very good at the version of this job that pays well," he said. "And I've been not particularly brave about the version of it that matters." She did not tell him what to do. That was the thing about Vera Lacombe he was coming to understand. She did not arrive at conversations with answers prepared. She arrived with attention, which was rarer and more useful. They stayed at that cafe table for 2 hours. The coffee crowd cycled through and was replaced by the lunch crowd, and he didn't notice the transition until she glanced at her phone and said her 1 o'clock had texted. "I have to go," she said. She pulled on the coat with the working zipper. "But I think you should take a case, through the pro bono division." "One case," she said. "See what happens." He looked at her. "And if it changes things?" She picked up her bag. "Then things needed changing," she said. And then she was out the door, the bell ringing again, and he watched her walk south on Elgin with the easy pace of someone who knew exactly where they were going. He took a case in February. It was not by the standards of his career a complicated case. A woman named Audrey, 67 years old, a retired schoolteacher from Vanier, had been disputing a wrongful denial of her disability benefits for 19 months. The file was a mess, incomplete documentation, a previous counsel who had missed a deadline, a system that had effectively worn her down to the point where she had stopped fighting. Robert read the file on a Sunday afternoon. He read it the way he had not read a file in years, not skimming for the argument, but listening for the person, for who Audrey was, underneath the forms and the timestamps. She had taught grade 4 French immersion for 29 years. She had a cat named Figaro. She could not currently walk to the end of her driveway without pain. He called her Monday morning. "Mrs. Audrey," he said, "my name is Robert Calloway. I'm a lawyer, and I've been looking at your file, and I'd like to help you, if you'll let me." There was a silence on the other end that he had not been prepared for. Not hesitation, but something more like the particular quality of a person who has been told no so many times that a yes arrives without warning. "You don't charge," she said. "It was not a question." "No charge," he said. Another silence. Then, "All right," she said simply. "The case took 4 months." There were moments that reminded him of his earliest years in practice, the sensation of building something from the ground up with your own hands, the specific frustration of bureaucratic resistance, the small, strange satisfaction of finding the exact right argument in the exact right place. He called Vera on a Thursday evening in late March. "I filed today," he said. "The brief, it's in. How does it feel?" she asked. He thought about it. Outside his office window, the canal had been clear of ice for 2 weeks. The skaters were gone. In their place, joggers, dog walkers, a man flying a kite with concentrated seriousness. "Like the first time I did this work," he said. "Like I remembered something I had put down and forgotten I was carrying." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "That's a good feeling, Robert." It was the first time she had called him by his first name in a conversation. He noticed it the way you notice a door opening in a wall you had assumed was solid. "It is," he agreed. Audrey's case resolved in June, in her favor. The department reinstated her benefits with back pay. She did not make a scene in the boardroom where the decision was delivered. She simply sat very still, and then she said, in a voice that was absolutely steady, "All right. Good." And then she allowed herself, once, to close her eyes. Robert drove her home to Vanier afterward. He had not planned to. He had a full afternoon. But when they stepped out into the summer heat and she mentioned the bus, he said, without thinking, "I can take you." She lived on a quiet street with old elms and a front garden that was slightly more ambitious than the available light allowed. When they pulled up, she sat in the passenger seat for a moment without getting out. "My daughter kept telling me to give up," she said. "Save yourself the grief." I kept thinking, if I give up, what does that say to her? That's not what I taught her. You taught her grade 4 French immersion, Robert said. I taught her 37 classes of grade 4 French immersion, Audrey said, and every one of those children is out there somewhere, doing something. That's the whole point. You do the thing, and then it goes out into the world, and you don't always get to see where it lands. She got out. She walked up her front path, slowly, still in pain, but upright. At the door, she turned and raised one hand. He raised his in return. Then she went inside. He sat in the car for a minute. He looked at the elm trees, the slightly too ambitious garden, the house where a retired teacher lived with a cat named Figaro and a daughter she had been teaching, without always knowing it, how to hold on. Then he took out his phone and he called Vera. "She won," he said when she picked up. He heard her exhale. Not surprise, but relief. The kind that comes when you've been hoping for something long enough that you'd started to wonder. "Of course she did," Vera said. He had been thinking for some weeks about how to say the next thing. He was a man who worked with words, who had shaped arguments for 3 decades, who knew exactly how to build a sentence toward a conclusion, and he could not find the right architecture for this particular thought. In the end, he said it the way Vera did most things, plainly. "I think you changed the direction of something," he said, "without meaning to, by driving me 4 blocks and sending me a card and asking questions that required actual answers. I want you to know that." There was the particular silence he had come to associate with Vera when she was actually considering something, not just waiting for her turn. "I drove you 4 blocks, she said. "You let me be honest about something I hadn't been honest about," he said. "That's not 4 blocks. "No," she said slowly. "I suppose it isn't." Outside his car window, a kid from one of the Vanier houses was drawing on the sidewalk with chalk, a sun, a house, a tree. The basic grammar of the world, rendered in yellow and green on gray concrete, absolutely serious in the way that children are serious about art. "Are you free Saturday?" he said. "A beat. For what?" "I don't know yet," he said. "Something that gets us outside." Another beat, then. "Yes," she said. "I'm free Saturday." Later, months later, when the story had accumulated enough distance that it could be looked at whole, Robert Calloway would not describe what happened between that November afternoon on Wellington Street and everything that followed as a turning point. He did not believe in turning points exactly. He believed in accumulation, in the way a person moves, almost without noticing, toward the things that are true about them. He had been moving towards something for a long time. He had just needed, on one particular afternoon, to reach out both hands and take the other side of the box. Audrey still sent him a card every Christmas, with a brief note about Figaro and the garden, which she had apparently decided to thin out to better match the available light. He always wrote back. Elodie, his nephew's daughter, Vera's, that is, turned 1 in November. He went to the birthday party. There was cake, and an argument about whether the collapsible high chair still had all its parts, and a lot of people standing around a kitchen in that way. People stand around kitchens when something is being celebrated in the ordinary and irreplaceable sense of the word. He stood with Vera by the window and watched the child bang a spoon against a plastic bowl with the absolute conviction of someone making music. "She's fearless," he said. "She is," said Vera. "They all start out that way." She paused. "Some of them find their way back to it." He thought about that. He thought about the brief he'd filed, and Audrey's closed eyes, and the canal in winter with the skaters crossing back and forth in the cold, clear air. "Some of them do," he said.